Hello everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith. In this video, we're going to be going over 25 games from 25 different publishers for new solo gamers. So my focus in this video is going to be on the new solo gamers. However, I'm also hoping that during this video, if you are a long-time solo gamer, that you are going to find something on this list, or maybe even a publisher behind one of these games that you never explored before, and you might find a particular game hidden amongst there. So again, every entry here on this list, being that this is just a general list in alphabetical order, it is not going to be in numerical order, it's not going to be ranked, it's just simply here is 25 games from 25 different publishers for new solo gamers. So that is the aim of the video. Again, this is my list, so of course there is going to be personal bias there in terms of games that I chose to be the game to pick from a particular publisher because of what I'm interested in. But as you go through this, hopefully you'll either agree or disagree on some of my choices, and then you'll go one step further into the publisher's library and maybe find something else that fits your style better, or might even find a publisher that's not mentioned in this list and find something special there too. Now, the last thing that I want to make mention of is some of the games that you're going to hear during this list, I may have videos for on the channel, and you can go ahead and check those videos out to become more familiar with the games and find out more information. I'm doing it this way for the first time, actually, in any listed video I've ever done before. We're actually going to reference Board Game Geek, which is kind of the central hub of this entire hobby, because it's a great point of reference for pictures we can walk through as I talk you through each of these different entries. I'm going to spend about a minute on every single one. So hopefully this video can stay around the 30-minute mark at max and be an informative video to show you a quick shot at each of these different options. So without further ado, how about we go ahead and start it off with the very first one. So being that the list is in alphabetical order, the first game we're going to hit is from the A category, which is Aeon's End. It's a deck building game. You can see here there's multiple major entry points into this game. Down below, from here below, is just expansions. So if you just do a generic search for Aeon's End, you'll bring this list up, and it's these ones right here you want to focus on in terms of picking one of them to kind of start your journey into this world. So this is the original, then the War Eternal came next, then Legacy, and then New Age. And I consider these three right here to actually be the three in which they follow closely to the core experience, whereas Legacy obviously adds legacy aspects, and I consider that kind of an offshoot version of Aeon's End. But if you're looking for legacy aspects, that's the only way to experience the game in the legacy format. So if you're going to choose between these three, it really depends. If you're the type of person that wants to choose and go from the beginning, that's fine. But remember, as the iterations go along, refinements are made, the game becomes even better than it was before. So in my recommendation, if you can get your hands on the New Age, I go there first. And if you can't, maybe one step back to War Eternal. The next game on the list is Anachrony. This comes from 2017. As you can see here in the weight category, if you're familiar with the complexity, this is actually getting up there. So this is a more complex game. But even though you're a new gamer and you're looking for something, if you want something to really challenge you out of the gate as a solo game, this is something I definitely recommend. It's a fantastically produced game, but not just its looks that will draw you in, it's mechanically sound as well. There's all kinds of teleportation, time travel elements, mechanisms meshed together that are just absolutely fantastic. Now, this is going to have a bunch of different mechanisms going on inside of it, like action point allowance, card drafting, set collection, worker placement. But this thing has won a whole bunch of awards when it first came out, and I highly recommend this being on your list of things to research. Next up, Arkham Horror, the card game. This came out in 2016. It's rated 8 for thematic on Board Game Geek and #1 in customizable. It's a hugely customizable card game, but you're not going to be buying packs or encounter packs just randomly hoping to get cards. Everything's preset in all those packs you'll buy. You'll have to know this is an expanding card game that will continue to release more and more content as you go through it. So this base entry will get you 3 scenarios to play. And then from there, you're buying more and more and more scenarios if you enjoy it past that. It is played at 1 to 2 players, and it is extremely loved in the solo gaming community. And it has a bunch of really cool mechanisms. It bases itself in H.P. Lovecraft's background of books and novels and that world. So if you like the horror side of things, you are going to enjoy this particular card game. This next entry is a fantastic solo gaming entry for Chronicles of Crime. This thing is very thematic. It uses your phone as a device in order to scan QR codes found on the cards in the box to then push the story forward as you try to solve crimes. You also use your phone with a set of glasses, and those glasses allow you to see a virtual environment of an actual crime scene as you try to piece clues together as quick as possible in the shortest amount of time to get the highest score. This is a game that has a bunch of expansions and DLC through the app online, and it's a fantastic implementation of technology along with a board game. It also has about a 3 to 4 page rulebook, and it's extremely fast to get to the table and plays in almost an hour. This next entry is called Dungeon Alliance, and this game, as you can see right here from the community voting, has actually been labeled as having solo as the best way to play the game, and this is likely because of the brain-burning element that's inside of this game. When I say that, what I mean is it truly is a puzzle in the sense of trying to min-max your turns and, you know, the synergies between your cards and actually being and doing the most effective thing you possibly can. And the craziness behind this is you would think with a dungeon crawler type experience that it wouldn't be that deep or that thinky, but it really does make you churn in your mind as to what to do next. And because of that, it actually allows for quite a lot of really cool mechanisms in the game. Card drafting's in there, deck pool building, grid movement. This is something to look into. This next entry is called Fallout Wasteland Warfare, the Fallout IP that we're all familiar with, but the game behind this one is actually fantastic. And if you're into miniatures games and you want a miniature game to be able to be played solo, of which many of them can't be without unofficial variants, this one has solo built in. The actual designers of the game from the beginning incorporated solo play in terms of a campaign, in terms of scenarios, in terms of the cards for the AI for each of the different miniatures. They've actually incorporated all of this into the gameplay so that you're not doing any guessing as to how to actually operate this thing solo. You build your own settlement, you maintain that settlement. This is a fantastic representation of how a miniatures game can be made solo. This next entry is called Folklore The Affliction, and this one ranks extremely high on the thematic ranking on Board Game Geek. If you're looking for a game that has a world map, something that's thematic, narrative driven, it's going to draw you into that world map so you can explore it and find out what's going on in this horror RPG board game, this is what you're going to want to check out. And it also goes down to even encounter levels in specific areas within that world map as well. The game overall is going to be a dungeon crawler vibe, but it's going to rely very heavily on the narrative side of things. So if you're more into a game that's going to draw out a story as you move through it, or at least create a story as you play it, this is something worth looking into. This next entry is the pinnacle of dungeon crawlers, and if you're actually out there looking for a dungeon crawler, this is the one you need to do your research on first. As you can see here, it's ranked overall number 1, thematic number 1, strategy number 1. It has legacy aspects, it has a world map, it has character progression, it has a character retirement that moves you from character to character. So unlike most dungeon crawlers where you're stuck with a character, your character is changing and leaving, and you're gaining new people, new items, new things. This is literally the best bang for buck dungeon crawler on the market currently, and likely will not be dethroned anytime soon. This next entry is called Gloom of Kill IV, a fantasy quest game, and this was developed with solo players in mind from the ground up. Not only is it a beautiful looking game and the artwork is uniform throughout it, looking utterly fantastic, drawing you into the game world, it literally does what a lot of card games fail to do in terms of drawing you into a world that sits on the table just with cards alone. There's only a couple other card games out there that have this sense of immersion and mechanics built in to really make you want to come back and play some more, and Gloom of Kill IV is one of those games. This entry is often referred to as a Grail game. It's called Kingdom Death Monster. It landed in 2015 and absolutely everybody heard about this thing when it did. It has a very high weight complexity rating. It is a mature game for sure, and it also has the highest barrier of entry just to get into the game at $400 retail from their store or $300 during the Kickstarter. It's the most expensive of any of the games on this list, which is why it's considered the Grail game, because it definitely moves into an enthusiast side of the hobby for miniature building, as well as an RPG and a board game experience. But quality-wise, if you're willing to dip your toes into this experience, it is something that will continue to give back. Individuals that have gotten sucked into this game have literally not reappeared for months and or years. Next up is Mage Knight Ultimate Edition. Now, this version of Mage Knight being a beloved solo game, ranking extremely high, if not at the very top of solo gamers' lists. This particular product has all the old expansions buried into one box, so you get the whole experience. You can see here the weight is very high on the complexity scale, but this particular game, for myself, was my entry point to solo gaming. It is the reason why I became passionate about it in the first place. Its mechanisms and the way it was designed was literally one of the most beautiful experiences that I've ever experienced in solo gaming. It just does take some time to get your head around it because it is a complex game, but if you do, there is a beauty to this game that cannot be missed. Next, we have Madeira Unintentional Malum Act Number 1, landed in 2019 after years of development, and when it did, it took the board game community by storm as a big surprise success, and then on top of that, followed it up with an even bigger Kickstarter this year for additional content, and all the individuals that have now seen this product are jumping on the bandwagon, and this thing is a behemoth of a game. Instead of it just being about size of the miniatures and the content inside the game, the actual heaviest thing inside of this thing is the narrated book. This book, for the story itself, is about 2.5 to 3 inches thick. They're going to have an app, which they currently have, and they're developing all the voice narration for the entire book, so you don't have to read it. That is the immersion factor that most dungeon crawlers don't have, and they went to another level with this thing to immerse you. Plus, they do a really fantastic job of not spoiling things as you move through the campaign, keeping things hidden until you use a decoder to reveal them. Next up, we have Nemos Wars 2nd Edition. If you're looking to hit the seas, take down some ships, this is exactly the game you want to pick up. You can see here it says thematic 49 on the rank and overall 378, very high. The community has ranked solo play as the best way to play this. Weight-wise, it's not as complex as some of the other ones in this list. And in terms of how it looks on the table, it's absolutely beautiful. The mechanisms within the game they look complex, but it's actually quite simplistic once you get the rules down. It's beautiful on the table, and it's also very, very intuitive to play, and you'll want to come back to this again and again. Absolutely a game worth researching into. Next up, we have Robinson Crusoe Adventures on the Cursed Island. This game is a staple in the solo community. You can see thematically it's ranked very high, overall very high as well. And honestly, even in the weight category, even though it tips towards more complex, this is one worth diving into. You will want to come back and experience this over and over again, as the game definitely has a nice element of punishing you as it goes through. So if you like a game that's going to challenge you in order to survive, and it's very thematically involved, you're going to feel like you're actually trying to survive on this island. This literally doesn't get any better in a solo capacity than Robinson Crusoe. Next game on the list is Cythe. This came out in 2016. It's ranked 11th on strategy, which is crazy high. Overall 9 as well. Very successful game. Continues to release expansions adding to it. And it's a very beautiful game at that. The artwork in the game is going to draw you in. It's going to immerse you. It's got mechs mixed with what's, farmland. It's a very interesting Europa going on here. And what's really cool about the actual game itself is it focuses on something that really doesn't typically get a lot of love on the solo side of things, which is area control and grid movement. It's usually not done that well, but in this game, inside the box, you'll get yourself a deck of AI cards you can use to control one faction. If you want, you can pick up multiple AI decks separately to control multiple factions, pitting yourself up against a whole bunch of different factions in a full-on game of Cythe, and it's a fantastic representation of how you can have an area control game in a solo capacity. This is an immersive experience, not only from the artwork, but from the gameplay as well. Here we have Shadows of Brimstone, City of Ancients from 2014, listed 45 thematically, overall 298. If you're looking for a game where you can get completely immersed and lost in an endless stream of expansions, replayability, and exploration, this is the dungeon crawler for you. You will be building miniatures as they're on sprues, but this game has a ton of content, and the stories that come out of this game are something that I've never ever experienced in any board game I've played before. The only hump to get over again is actually building the products themselves. But once you get past that hump of supergluing things together, this is a world that you'll want to explore again and again, as the stories that come out of it in solo play are fantastic. To take this game to the next level, head to the files section and check out the Hexcrawl variant. You need this variant in order to take this game from being a good solo game to an absolutely epic level game. Next up, we have Spirit Island from 2017. This game is ranked 13 in the strategy column and 14th overall, so very high. Absolutely worth checking out just because of its rank alone. It is tipping into the heavier side of things, though, so if complexity is an issue, that's worth keeping an eye on. But the reward for learning this one is absolutely worth it, as you're going to be one of these spirits on the island, or potentially more than one, as you're going to be trying to ward off colonizers from coming into the island, disrupting things. You basically just don't want them there. And the mechanisms within the game that actually allow you to do so, plus coupled with the theme of what's going on, it's so well integrated, and there is additional content for this thing coming out all the time. So it is a supported game. You can expect to see more expansions and more content as time goes on. Absolutely worth researching into. Next up, we have Street Masters. This one is ranked 376 on the thematic scale, and I can tell you right now, the barrier to entry on this one is quite low because the complexity is not that high, which makes it fantastic for getting the game, not only learning it, but getting it to the table quickly. The replayability is off the charts, as you can basically just add more and more and more content to the game, giving you more and more combinations to play, whether it's location-based, boss-based, what character you're controlling. But there's all kinds of elements that really keep the game flowing in a fast-paced way so that you're not always overly crunching or analyzing your moves. It's all about quick, fast reactions and moving forward. So those dice can chain with critical hits. You can use particular dice, or sorry, I should say cards from your hand, in order to impact the game board itself, whether it be an actual minion you're attacking or a boss. There's all kinds of elements of gameplay that are just absolutely fantastic, and you'll have those wow moments during the game where you successfully take down a boss with an absolutely critical kill, and it will feel like nothing else. Terraforming Mars is one of the single best strategy board games for solo gamers, hands down, and continues to release expansions that not only flush out the gameplay even further, but just build on what already works in Terraforming Mars without breaking anything that's currently already in the game. It is a path worth traveling. If you're interested in strategy games with these types of mechanisms in it, card drafting, hand management, set collection, take that, tile placement, all that stuff included, you are going to enjoy Terraforming Mars. It's also visually enticing on the table. It's an actual theme which most people are into, and the gameplay itself is second to none. Here we have Thunderstone Quest. If you're looking for a game that is all about deck building, we talked about Aeon's End way before. Here's another entry into that space. We have Thunderstone Quest, which has a whole bunch of quests that have come out, but what's really important is an expansion called Barricades Mode. This is an expansion that took Thunderstone Quest from being a 2 to 4 player experience and actually allowed it to be played solo, and because of that, that is why it is landing on this list. If you pick up the base game by itself, it will not be playable solo. You will need to go ahead and pick up Barricades Mode, which looks like this. This is what you'll be after, and this will open up the ability to play the game in a single player capacity, and it's absolutely worth looking into. Next is the Seventh Continent from 2017, thematically ranked 5, overall 16. If you are looking for a game of pure discovery, you have found it. This is a game where you'll be on a continent with a curse that you need to get rid of. You have no idea how, but the game will kind of evolve as you go, as you try to rid this curse. You can see the playtime is craziness, as you can basically die right away, or you could potentially make it to an 1,000-minute mark, for instance, in one of the curses. There is a save game function that makes this a lot easier. Complexity-wise, this is talking about the learning side of things. It's not a hard game to learn, but it is a hard game to master. You will die, you will make mistakes, and you will replay to make better decisions or learn from those mistakes. So it's a min-max there in terms of using your time wisely. Now, the game also employs a bunch of mechanisms that are really cool, like modular boards, of course, because you're discovering things, you're flipping cards over, hand management, all that good stuff. The reason I think this is a game that's worth looking into is because it recently was announced that it's no longer Kickstarter exclusive, and it is going to be going to retail in a skimmed down version, which won't remove a ton of content, but will remove a little bit of the bonuses that everyone received in the Kickstarter version. So now everyone can gain access to this title. Here we have the City of Kings from 2018, strategy rank 384, thematically 119. This game is about average in terms of its weight. The game itself is beautifully produced. It looks fantastic on the table. I like to call this a mix of many different mechanisms. It's almost hard to sum it up in 1 minute, but essentially the best way to say it is it's advanced chess. If you take away all the storytelling, the narrative, the campaign that's going on, the exploration, and the mechanisms that are involved, what's happening here is there's actual tiles on the ground as you're moving throughout this world and revealing them. And as you do, your position on this game world truly matters. Where you are situated versus the enemies you're facing and what's been revealed on the map becomes kind of this advanced chess situation where you're constantly trying to figure out and make sure you're in the best position for either the next turn, the current turn, or future turns. You're always planning ahead, which I really like, plus you're upgrading your characters along the way. Definitely worth checking out the City of Kings, as it's absolutely in the wheelhouse of solar gamers. Next up, we have This War of Mine, the board game. Yes, this game comes as a result of the PC game, which most of us or some of us are familiar with, called This War of Mine. And this game, as you can see on Board Game Geek, is listed the best way to play is solo, and I truly agree with that. This is a very heavy game. I'm not talking about weight in terms of complexity, although it sits around average from this numerical value. I'm talking about the weight of the emotional toll of the game itself. When you play through This War of Mine, the narrative is the strongest element of this entire game. The mechanisms within the game are also very good, but the narrative and the feeling of what's actually happening in this war-torn city will take its toll on you, and you will actually leave game sessions at times actually emotionally exhausted from the choices you had to make in order to survive. Some of them are quite heavy, but it's an experience, and a serious experience, that most board games are find it impossible to match or even come close to. So for that reason, this is something that solo gamers absolutely should look into. Here we have a game called Too Many Bones. Strategy-wise, it's listed as 63, thematically 13, and overall 105. It has a heavier weight to it in terms of its rules, but honestly, the solo gaming community is very much on board with Too Many Bones. Most people have heard about this game, and it is a heavy game even in its actual weight, because it is full of some of the highest quality components out there. Neoprene mats, exquisite dice, as well as crazy chip quality poker chips that are weighted. And the game production and the actual campaign and journey that you'll go on in Too Many Bones to take down a tyrant is very unique, as you build out your character, and it's unique each and every time. You use dice faces to determine values on attacks or specific abilities. There's so much to reference here, so much to dig into, and the game continues to be supported and expanded as the years go on. This is a high recommendation for Too Many Bones. Definitely something to look into. And last but not least, we have Zombicide for the new solo gamers out there that are wondering what to get if you just want a game about pure survival where you're basically in trouble from the start of the game and you're just trying to survive. Zombicide is it. It's a dice chucking game. There's lots of randomness involved. In terms of solo gamers, experienced or new, especially the experienced crowd, most of us have experienced Zombicide in some capacity, as there's multiple iterations here. I'd highly recommend jumping in either Green Horde or Black Plague for fantasy, or the Invader level for space. I would actually personally jump past any modern versions here, as it's been enhanced and the rules have been refined as time has gone on. So if you're new to this, you're going to want to jump in the fantasy or space boat, unless you really love the modern version of zombies and what that could present. Also, do realize that Simon, who creates this game, is also coming out with a system where Zombicide, a new version, a modern version, will be released. So that's another reason to maybe avoid the modern versions of the past. So that is going to wrap up the list of 25 games from 25 publishers to check out if you're a new solo gamer. So hopefully as we move through the 25 entries in this list that you're able to find at least one, if not more, games that interest you to research into. Remember, if you're an experienced gamer or even a new one that's already experienced all of these games or heard of all of them, be sure to check out the publisher and designer behind each of them because they likely have games in the past or coming in the future which are solo playable as well and could also be of interest in you. So doing that research, you might discover some other games that might surprise you. On top of that, in the comments below, let me know your thoughts on the list in general. Were there things you would take out? Were there things that you would add in? Are there other recommendations that you would give another solo player? Let's actually produce a nice community list in the comments for new individuals to come as a reference of games that they can check out that you've enjoyed as well. And we can kind of add that all in here so it's one point of reference for those new gamers to get that information and then move out into the wild to find those games. Again, on the channel here, we do have videos for a large majority of the games mentioned here, but not all of them, so you might have to go elsewhere to find those videos as well. But again, the purpose of the video is to get a nice springboard going for those new solo gamers in our community. So thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.